Ja, willkommen zurück. Welcome back to Zeit für Klima. We are now changing the language to English, but nevertheless, please continue to ask your questions using Slido in English or in German, as you like. Now we'll discuss a topic that seems to become increasingly relevant. It's called investing with a scientific approach. How can green startups really make the world a better place? So on one hand, we talk about startups that want to make the world better, greener, more healthy, more livable, more sustainable. And we talk about investors who not only take a close look at these startups' financial metrics, but also take a scientific approach looking at their impact, which means it's still about maximizing and scaling, but the focus is not only the profit, but maybe even more the impact. And sustainability seems to be on the mind of really lots of founders right now. This morning, the German Startup Monitor was published by the Bundesverband Deutsche Startups, which is one of the main voices of the German startup scene. And one of the findings was that many founders actually want to combine sustainability and growth, and that they think both of them are not mutually exclusive. Roughly 2/3 of the founders want to be sustainable and grow quickly. And they still say, or they say, that venture capital in Germany is still pretty scarce. So they see fundraising as a stumbling block. So it's some kind of being like in a desert. They want to make their environment greener, but they are running risk to dry out themselves. So they have to find sources of funding. And then there's this new trend that maybe helps out, because there are some investors that want to invest into green and sustainable and climate-friendly startups. And we have invited 3 guests who will talk about these ideas and why they are so pretty interesting to investors. And I'd like to introduce them to you now. My name is Jens Tönnesmann. I'm a journalist with Die Zeit here in Hamburg, and I'm also running a magazine called Zeit für Unternehmer, in which we focus a lot on entrepreneurs and the German Mittelstand, which tries to become greener as well these days. So I'd like to introduce the first guest to you. I'm not sure if any of you out there ever had the chance of traveling the world for 4 months. But if you want to know how this could change your life, and maybe if you want to change your life, our first guest is probably a good person to speak to. He started, well, his first company when he was a teenager. He started building websites for other companies together with a friend. And because they were so successful, they were kind of forced to form a company around that, and they became entrepreneurs. In 2007, they started Jimdo, which since then has enabled millions of people to easily create their own websites. A company that at first grew pretty fast, became profitable very soon, and then had a very severe crisis. And he traveled Asia after this crisis and says this has become, well, a life-changing experience for him. So when he returned, he decided to invest his time and resources only into startups that are significantly better and more sustainable than today's economy. And together with others, he founded a company called White Plastic, offering the first trash bag that can actually clean up the planet instead of, well, making it worse. And then he started Planet A Ventures, and he'll tell us about that more today. So hello, Fridtjof Detzner. How are you?
Good, super good to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, the first question to you. Your journey took 4 months, as I already said, and it's possible to see all the different episodes you experienced there on your website, but this will take an evening. So was there some kind of a certain moment during your travel in which you realized for the first time that things have to change and that maybe you also have to change?
Yeah, so we took 10 out of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals as shells for each of the episodes. And first, like if you want to portray the solutions of founders, you also have to show the problem. And so this journey for me personally was more problem orientated than solution orientated. And first, during this, I've seen problem after problem after problem, and at some point you start to realize the patterns. So basically, that the economy has been building is creating winners and losers, and that we kind of build this external, this economy which also externalizes some of the work which is leading to poor working conditions or to environmental pollution, to other countries, but it's still all connected. And then like seeing this and then realizing the patterns that was really indeed life-changing, because like if you're interviewing a farmer that actually tried to commit suicide because of the third year in a row no yield due to climate change, that's kind of this moment where you really realize, hey, this is something like you're looking someone in the eyes which is suffering from a problem he hasn't created in the first place, and that makes you connect on a deeper level. So I do believe that we all know that, but kind of the experience for myself changed my focus quite substantially.
So if you talk to some farmer who was about to commit suicide, or if you talk to people, to children that start working with 8 or 9, as you did in Bangladesh, for example, did you find that depressing on the first hand? And how did you manage to turn this, well, maybe depressive moments into some positive energy and the wish to change the world?
So indeed, it was a lot to take in. And then we did a portrait of founders that are actually doing something about it. But again, it was an overwhelming experience to see all the problems. It's like I really feel privileged to be able to see all that, because normally you are not to be able to travel the world and see all these problems. And coming back from this 120 days of filming, I realized for myself, I want to put my time and resources into startups which are actually tackling the problems as we speak about it. But what I really realized is like I want to help and educate, commit my time to the ones who are really doing the significant change. And the significant change to me is then you have to have a method of finding out which ideas really have the potential to do something substantially and not do greenwashing. And so that really, Anna actually helped me in the first place to realize the quantitative effects of, you have to quantify the impact of a startup to be able to measure it and set it in relation to today's economy. And that really helped me a lot to gain this understanding of quantitative data and how important it is to consider it when it comes to investment decisions, because that is something which hasn't been done in the past.
Yeah. I mean, we will come to the methods you're using maybe later, and now talk about startup ideas that have the potential to change the world for the better. And I'd like to introduce the second guest to this panel. She has spent a lot of time at the university, first studying process engineering and then completing her doctorate in the field of biorefinery. And she started with great grades from the beginning, but her grades got even better and better, and she got her doctorate with summa cum laude. But still, she decided that pure science is not everything and took the risk to become an entrepreneur. So she dedicated her scientific research to solving the problem of global plastic pollution. And she invented a new technology last year, which follows the cradle-to-cradle design principles. And together with a colleague, she founded Traceless Materials, which is a circular bioeconomy startup here in Hamburg. And she'll probably tell us a little more in detail what this actually means. A few days ago, she received 2.4 million euro in funds from the European Innovation Council, which is pretty special because I think there were 4,000 applicants, 4,000 startups or founders who applied for that, and she managed to get it with Traceless. And now she hopes that this funding will allow her to accelerate her startup more quickly, build a production plant, and bring Traceless to market quickly. So I'm very happy she's here with us today. Hello, Anne Lamp. Hello, Anne.
Hello, very nice to be here.
Yes, that's great. I mean, I'm a beginner when it comes to biorefinery and stuff like that. So can you briefly explain to a beginner like me what Traceless is actually doing?
Sure. So Traceless is a material innovation. We produce a novel material, like a base material, for the plastic converting industry. We want to make an impact on the plastic pollution. That's our driver. We want to make a huge impact on the plastic pollution. And therefore, we designed a process for a novel material that is fully biocircular. That means we take byproducts of the food processing industry. For example, if you produce beer and from barley, then there's always a leftover. And this you can use. This is a non-food resource. And this we convert in our innovative process for different resources. We convert into this base material that can then be used by the plastic converting industry to substitute plastics in many applications that easily end up in the environment. Because 40% of all plastic waste that we produce ends up in the environment. We all know this problem. And to solve this, our material has the huge functionality that it degrades in the environment within a few weeks. And that's a novel, just a novel base material that has many, many options to be implemented in products. That's what we do.
I mean, we use plastic every day, and I've spoken to a couple of company owners, for example, from Simply V, who are creating vegan cheese alternatives, and they used to tell me, when we're looking a lot at the things we put into our cheese, but there are almost no alternatives in where to put our cheese in itself, because when you want to make it that it stays fresh for a couple of days, you almost always need plastic. So what are you doing differently? What are you doing better?
So in general, plastics is a very emotional topic also, right? So everyone hates plastic because we see it everywhere in the environment. But so our innovation is driven by the cradle to cradle principles. We don't have a plastic waste problem. We just have a product design problem. So we need to design products in a way that they can be recycled afterwards, either technically or biologically. And what we do differently is that we design products from materials that nature creates, so natural polymers, natural materials that we use for applications like packaging applications, and they can, after they use, then be degraded by nature again. That's what we make differently. So a lot of applications possible, especially in the packaging industry.
So circular economy means that everything you put in, you can reuse later on, and is already being reused and was produced by nature itself.
So circular economy means in the end that we don't have any waste anymore, and that on the other hand, we don't use any resources anymore. It's also a huge topic of impact measurement, right? So only then we will come to a sustainable world with treating our resources. If you take, for example, the packaging, they need to be designed in a way that they can either be recycled technically to the same quality again, to use the pure materials again, or for the biological cycle, using bio-based resources and then integrating the materials after they use in the biological cycle again.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the moment, Anne. I'd like to introduce our third guest, who is also running a company that is still about to start up. I think it already started in Berlin, but it is still invite only, so it's kind of very special. And I'm very happy he's with us today. He's a very prominent figure of the startup scene in Berlin or in Germany. He originally comes from Sweden, where he studied industrial economics. And I looked him up on the net and found that one of his professors said in 2007, he is a hyper-intelligent and wildly productive guy and a change agent in anything he decides to work on. So I think this fits pretty well, because he started so many projects. After moving to Germany in 2007, he founded SoundCloud together with Alexander Jung, which is today the largest open music and audio platform in the world. And being wildly productive, he did not only create SoundCloud, but he created and played music as well all the time. And last year, he and Alex Jung decided to start their next company. And this is called Dance, and it is or offers a subscription service for e-bikes. And it's founded with the goal of having a positive impact on people's health, mobility, sustainability, and urban living. So Dance has also received some millions of funding already, and among its investors are prominent musicians and actors. And I'm happy to learn more about the idea behind Dance and how it has been created. So hello, Eric Quidenus-Walfors. Hello, Eric.
Hi, great to be here. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks
I
for
looked
having
up
me.
I looked up your LinkedIn profile, and people endorse you for a lot of things. They endorse you for mobile apps, for entrepreneurship, for web strategy, for e-commerce. But what's missing is sustainability. So when and why did your focus change, and when did you realize that sustainability is maybe more important than e-commerce or web strategy or things like that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I think for me, sustainability was with me, in the sense that my father was very passionate about sustainability, sort of in the mid 90s. Like I can vividly recall conversations with him about electric cars and wind power and all this kind of stuff. And then it was sort of always there in the background for me. And I remember watching Al Gore's movie back in 2006, Inconvenient Truth, and then the years sort of went by, and then at the time of the Paris Agreement, this was in 2015, I got sort of completely sucked into the climate sort of challenge that we're really facing on a planetary scale, and I realized sort of the seriousness of the issue at the time, and I ended up starting to read books on the side and sort of got met some experts and stuff like that, and then eventually decided to step down from SoundCloud, which I had been doing then. So in early 2019, when I left it, I had been there for about 12 years, and decided to take a sabbatical and just look at what could be next. And my main focus was, could I, with my background, have some sort of impact on climate, right? And so, long story short, what happened then was that at the end of 2019, well, really long story short, through a mutual friend, I met this guy Christian, and then together, Christian, Alex, and myself, we started a company called Dance, and Dance is an e-bike subscription service. So you get your own e-bike, and if it breaks, if you have any kind of problem with it, if it gets stolen, you essentially press a button and the bike reappears. And so the idea is, can we make it extremely easy and simple to own a great e-bike, where you don't have to care at all about the ownership part? There's no, take all the friction out of that, and you're just, left with the enjoyment of the ride itself. And around that company, I mean, fundamentally, this is an impact company. So we want to create more livable cities. That's our big North Star goal. And it's an exciting trend right now with cities getting more bike friendly, more micromobility friendly. So we're seeing more and more cities embracing that on a sort of much bigger scale than before. So that's an exciting trend. And then e-bikes, just are having a moment really right now in terms of the innovation going on in e-bikes and the adoption. So it's an exciting time sort of for micromobility, and the approach we are taking to all of that is a very sort of technology and design driven, product driven approach. So that's really how I think we set ourselves apart, and how we combine that with the service and the high service level that we have around Dance.
Yeah, I got an e-bike myself during the pandemic, I think in the end of last year, and I had to wait a couple of weeks until I got it. And now I was asked to, get an inspection of the e-bike, and I again have to wait a couple of weeks until I can turn it in to get the inspection. Because there's so many people who wanted to get an e-bike during the pandemic on one hand, and on the other hand, all these supply chains broke, and it got quite difficult for some of the companies to get the parts they need to build bicycles. So how did this affect your idea? I mean, you started just before the pandemic started, so you went straight into that. Did that in any way affect you? Did it help you maybe, or did it make it more difficult?
Yeah, I mean, yes, so it's exactly right. We started before the pandemic, then the pandemic hit, and we were all wondering what will happen now, right? Like, will this be good or bad for what we are trying to build here? It turns out it was extremely good, right? Because it led to the biggest bike boom that we've ever seen in terms of numbers in history. So that's very, very exciting and somewhat unexpected development. And then, of course, along with it, we've had this sort of global supply chain and logistics sort of crisis, let's say. So it's been challenging times in terms of delivering the product and getting it into the hands of customers. And I think your experience, if you've only waited a couple of weeks, it's actually a good, decent experience for waiting for an e-bike today, because people end up waiting months, right? And we know pretty much everyone in the industry had delays and challenges. So we're lucky that within the space of a year, we actually managed to develop an e-bike during all of these circumstances, and it's now hit the streets in Berlin. It's very early, but we have a couple of hundred customers, and and it's very exciting times for us in the company. And with Dance, you push a button, you get the e-bike within 24 hours, if it breaks, if it gets stolen, you get it repaired within 24 hours, usually much faster than that. So it's extremely, we pride ourselves on those aspects of it, that, you know, those problems that you just talked about are gone with Dance.
Yeah. And if I got it correctly, you wish to enroll the service throughout Europe. And I read that you eventually even want to go to the US. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a global movement, right? This is a global mega trend. This idea of subscribing to everything and embracing livable cities, embracing smaller vehicles for getting around in the urban environment is a big idea, right? That the whole world is adopting in one shape or another. And so, you know, for us, we have global ambitions, starting in Europe, you know, now here in Berlin, but going from there.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned that you found a couple of pretty prominent investors. Why did they decide to invest into a company that maybe doesn't only focus on maximizing the money it got, but also maximizing the impact on the other hand, or even more in maximizing that?
Yeah, for us, it's all about sort of sparking a movement, right? And so one way to do it is to have people who have large followings, large fan bases aligned with us as a company and as investors in the company. Mm-hmm. So for us, that's the main factor for us is, are these people value aligned? Do they believe in the story of what we're trying to do? Do they also want to make a positive impact on the planet? And that's been really our screening criteria. And then we love diversity. So we just have, you know, people from, you know, all kinds of sectors and people doing all kinds of stuff. So it's been super fun to work on that in the background, getting some of these people on board.
Yeah, you mentioned your co-founder Christian, and maybe for clarification, Christian was the co-founder with Fritjof when they started Jimdo a couple of years ago. So there's some connection there. And I would like to bring in Fritjof now as the founder of Planet A. What is your connection to Dance? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Fritjof.
Yeah, so we're invested in them and also in Anne's company. And so for us, coming back to what we do, so basically, if you take 10 steps back also on my journey, then we can see we have built an economy which is using far too many resources, like 1.7 Earths, and we only have one. And we have to come to an economy which really works within the planetary boundaries. And so that's our angle, how we look at startup, not only from a business point of view, also like actually are these cases to contribute to an economy which is working within the planetary boundaries. And so we look at these companies saying, yes, for different reasons, they are part of this transition. And so we really look, from a scientific angle onto these models and then can judge if also from an impact perspective, we want to be part of this, yes or no. And for these two companies, we definitely want to be part of this because we believe when we're doing our analysis from that standpoint that they're driving this forward. And I think both of the companies also building on future regulations, future changes, which are occurring already, but they're also only going to accelerate. And I think in order to make wise and good investment decisions, you kind of have to anticipate the future regulation, what is there to come and what changes are to come. And then I would argue you need this broader lens and taking more into account than just the business view.
So if you look, you take this scientific approach, looking at companies, looking at startups. So if you look through your scientific glasses at a company like Dance, what do you look at and how do you try to find out which kind of impact and what kind of impact it is creating for the world?
So the foundation for our analysis is our life cycle assessments. And life cycle assessments, the German word for it would be Ökobilanz. And what you really do is you look at all the mass and energy balances throughout the life cycle of a product, meaning from the raw extraction of the materials, where does the metal come from for the bike, how the production is being done, and then also how much energy you use each time. So basically you consider everything and you map it out, and then you are really able to have like the holistic view on the impact of the company. And we not only do it once, we do it actually twice. So because if you want to judge if this is way better, significantly better than today's economy, we have to do it twice. So we also look at what does it compare to. And for example, when it comes to Dance, it's like basically the hypothesis is, and that's what what Eric is saying is, are we able to move more people away from cars towards cool electrified bikes, which are not a pain anymore to own because the maintenance, everything is included. And then this is kind of really driven by behavioral change, that you have a really good alternative, which is frictionless, which is good, and therefore people swap. And then you have the tool to analysis, like the status quo, the energy mix, or the transportation mix today. And then it's about like the calculation of the bike itself. And then together with a behavioral shift, you'll be able to quantify that and then judge if this is part of the movement, yes or no.
Yeah, I mean, when you explain this, it sounds pretty easy, but I've spoken to a couple of companies from the German Mittelstand who try to measure their carbon footprint. And even measuring your own carbon footprint is quite difficult. And you have to decide whether you take in only the emissions you produce yourself, or if you take in all the emissions your suppliers are also creating. So it's a pretty complicated process, and many companies have problems doing that. So how difficult is it for you to assess the life cycle of a company that has just been founded, that is still building up, and that often still is also pivoting and changing things very fast?
So it is, to be honest, it is a lot of work. And basically what you need to do, you have to cut your team differently than traditional VCs. You have to employ scientists that are able to calculate this kind of footprints. And you also, what I would argue, you have to give them a voice when it comes to the investment decision itself, right? So it's one thing to be able to calculate something, but another thing is to give the scientists or the voice of science and actually the power to also veto an investment decision. And that's what we do and what we're doing. And so, it's hard to generalize how much time goes into a calculation like this, because it really depends on the data quality and how innovative some of the parts are. Then you have to dig down into the real data and the process if this is an innovation. So what we do is like the initial one really costs something between 100 and 250 hours to do a really good calculation. So quite intense. On the other side, especially in Anne's cases, it's also a huge benefit to the company itself, because they have an external data point, a proof point for their own impact. And that is, I think, maybe Anne can elaborate more about it, but it is something of value to a startup to have. And therefore, I think we have a better understanding by doing this, and also better, like I would say, an additional data point also for the future monetary success of the company. Because if the regulation is changing, then the companies Eric and Anna are building are better equipped for the future regulatory changes. Sorry, and I think that is important.
Yeah, I mean, before we talk about traces and come back to Anna, I'd like to ask Eric a question. Eric, you build up SoundCloud, and you have often spoken to investors in the past 20 years, I guess, or 15 years. So you're used to showing them your data, your ideas, when to earn money, how to earn money, stuff like that. So how difficult was it for you to assess also these data needed to measure your impact? I mean, how difficult and how changing was this? And did you somehow react to that? I mean, did you see that your impact could go in a different direction when you changed certain things? And how much did you change when assessing your impact?
I would say that we how should I put it? We fundamentally believe that this is on a kind of unit basis is a positive company for the world. So every bike we can get out there, we think will have a positive impact. And I think that's where it starts for us. Then, of course, like over time, I think we'll go much deeper in terms of understanding, okay, can we optimize the production of the bikes? Can we optimize, how we run operations and all of these things? Right now, I think for us, it's really about building a product that people love and getting the first kind of level of adoption for us. So I think that's really been our main focus, knowing that we think our product is fundamentally positive for the world. The moment for us, I think, when we started going more scientific on this was when we talked to Fritjof's team, right, to Planet A. And so we actually did look deeper. I will still say though that it's very early for us, and we fully kind of we fully intend to go very deep on this, and both in terms of measurement to understand, you know, the impact that we're having, and in terms of now and future, and then also of course taking measures to optimize that over time. So yeah, that's what I would say. I think right now, like, we're, in terms of talking to investors, I have seen definitely much more activity in the space of sustainability over the last just 2 years, 3 years. Like, it's picked up a lot, and people are starting to ask for these things. That people are, you know, it's much more top of mind than it used to be. It's a different world, quite frankly. So that's a very positive trend. But still, I think, you know, funds like Planet A are really at the forefront of pushing this even further, because usually it's not really like, it's not numbers oriented. It's not numbers focused in the same way.
Maybe one more question, because I just spoke to a company from Cologne, a startup from Cologne, that are building Lastenräder, so bicycles where you can carry heavy stuff or your kids through the city. And they told me that they try to build everything in Germany, but they have to buy certain parts in Asia, and they don't know how they are created and how climate friendly they are created. So what are the biggest compromises you had to, agree to when building up Dance? What is still not as you wish it to be, and you would like to, change it?
I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that we are currently manufacturing in Taiwan. And that's it is sort of the Silicon Valley of bikes over there in Taichung. So if you want to get, you know, if you quickly want to get great products to customers, that is the place to go. It's certainly one of the best places to be. It's not ideal for, like, ideally we would be assembling bikes in Europe, and I think this is something we're definitely looking at. So I think, you know, for the future we'll be exploring that for sure. In terms of operations and how we run, like logistics and things like that, at the moment we're already using electric mobility sort of across the board. So when you know, if it's vans or if it's cargo bikes and things like this, we're using that already. So we're taking some measures already to make sure that we run a kind of as close to climate neutral operation as possible. But I think there's a lot more to do there. But yeah, the bike itself is sort of the biggest footprint environmentally for us.
I see. Okay. Anne, with Traceless, you already published your first life cycle assessment report, I think in June or something like this. And it's 17 pages explaining what Traceless is doing and how its impact is actually looking like. What did surprise you most when you created this report? Was there anything in it you didn't expect, where you were maybe better or worse than you expected or hoped for?
Yes, so actually the 17 pages, that's the summary.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but so it is quite complex to do this. And basically you compare the world with Traceless to the world without Traceless. And it's not just the material itself where you can compare, okay, it's fossil-based or non-fossil-based, but you need to start from the beginning. The resource, if you take biomass, then this biomass could also be used for cattle feed or biogas production. And if you take it out, you need to have a substitution for that. So this is all considered. And I was surprised by, actually how good we are in all impact indicators, and not only the plastic pollution and the climate impact, but also the land use change. So we actually, compared to conventional plastics, saving land. So that was a surprise. It comes out of the consequential LCA. And what's very important there to say is that it is not only about climate impact, because we are talking a lot about climate, which is obviously an important impact indicator, but it's also about resources. We can have a brilliant business idea, impact business that is solving some climate protection, but we still need to look at the resources and also come to a sustainable treatment of the resources there. So we have a part that the third one is then also the biodiversity which is another impact indicator, which we need to take care of in the consequential LCA. And this has all been done in the LCA that was done by Planet.
Yeah, and how does the LCA, the life cycle assessment or the Ökobilanz, help you when you talk to potential investors or maybe governments or maybe potential partners or customers?
So as we are an impact startup, this is really in our DNA. We need to prove that. That's very important for us. There are basically a lot of other solutions. If we talk about the material solutions, for example, a lot of other materials out there, but we need to prove that we make a real difference, because there's also a lot of greenwashing out there. Mm-hmm. And that is, for me, the most important argument for impact investment, to do something against greenwashing. Mm-hmm. This is also why we chose Planet A, or they chose us as an investor, to also show to others, to our customers, to other future investors, that we take it seriously. We want to be measured. We want to be, our impact to be measured by our investor, and to differentiate our action and our whole production from the greenwashing solutions.
Yeah, so maybe let's take this discussion to a more general or broader level. Do you think that there need to be more, I don't know, industry standards, for example, or governmental actions to create incentives for companies like yours or for customers you want to address, that they can more easily decide what is actually greenwashing and what is really fundamental, having a fundamental impact on the world? I mean, what do you wish for in this context?
Yes, of course, that would help a lot. I mean, we just had the Single-Use Plastic Directive, for example, that prohibits plastics in several applications, which of course helps us a lot. But first of all, I want everyone to trust the science again, and to look at to listen to the science, because you can also tell a lot of great stories about your product, but I want everyone to want the proof for that. And also, when it comes to certificates, then I wish for regulations to be more strict on certificates. For example, the non-toxicity of products, the recyclability of products, the quality of products, bio-basedness of products. This I also wish. But in the end, to come to a real change, we need everyone. We need the economy, we need the investors, but we also need society and the politics to make an impact. And we all need to work together here.
Yeah. Eric and Fridtjof, what do you think? What's your observation? Do you have the impression that the startup scene and the investment scene in Germany is fundamentally changing? Or do we see a lot of, greenwashing or claiming to be green, but only a very, a small core of startups and founders and investors who really take the issue of impact serious?
Basically what we're seeing is, more and more founders. I mean, and Eric is a great example, because he's a super successful founder, and now he's thinking about what to do next, and he's actually taking into account that he's using his privilege and his position to build something meaningful. And this is what we're seeing all over the place, that privileged people or people that are able to build companies that are actually tackling these big problems. And so I see the huge shift. I think more and more people are getting that this is kind of not something, I don't know, hippie-esque to do or super nice. I think it will be a major driver of profits as well, because we like, the problems won't go away, and we need to build companies, and we need to build innovation that's really addressing these challenges. And we have such a potential of really good people in Europe, and I sometimes feel like, why don't we back them enough to be able to build this sort of companies? Mm-hmm. And why do we have still this framing of doing something good means having less returns or something? Because I think we need this change anyway. I think it's without question that we have to transform our economy within an economy which actually works within the planetary boundaries. And we're only going to get there if we take it seriously and measure this stuff. Otherwise, it would be just pure luck to get there, and that won't happen. So I think we have to change our framing a lot. And I think there's more and more people that actually get it. That's not something additional and optional. It should be at the core of decision making. Mm-hmm. And across the board, when it comes to the new government, when it comes to which company I'm founding, which company we invest into, how we as private individuals we're placing our money, all of this is super important and super, we should consider that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Planet A is not the only investor that's looking at impact now. Last week, for example, there was the World Fund launched with, I think, 350 million euros, also trying to address the same need, looking at impactful startups. Do you consider this as competition, or do you think, no, it's great that other people join the movement and we can create a fundamental change if we are bigger?
Definitely second. So we speak on a regular basis and we exchange notes. And also, for example, 2150, 1.5 years ago, I spoke with them, and they actually also employed a life cycle analyst after we had the conversation. So I think, more and more people have to think that way and have to have a different sort of think about investments. And the more people join and look at that, the better it is. So I think it's highly welcome.
Mm-hmm. So Eric, what would you add when you look at the German startup scene? You know it pretty well. You've been here you have been around for 15 years. How would you, what change are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's certainly a big change in terms of people sort of talking the talk. The question is how many people really then walk the walk, right? Like, so how many people are really truly either shifting their, investing activities or their entrepreneurial activities to something that really, works to have impact. So I think there's, now there's a lot of sort of almost like peer pressure to talk the talk, right? So, and that's where kind of the greenwashing stuff is coming from as well. I have to say I got slightly disillusionized during my sabbatical, in that I do think regulation is going to be essential here. I don't think you could just rely on sort of the completely free markets, just sort of everyone just getting it right by themselves. I think you need strong incentives to kind of do the right thing. So whether it's accounting for all of these externalities, like if we're going to have an economy that respects the planetary boundaries, the way that happens is essentially that you start accounting for all of the problems that business is actually causing, and so that has to be accounted for, and the way that happens is through regulation. I don't really see many other ways in which that happens, right? So of course we have a lot of kind of like groundswell right now, and it's great, and we are seeing very positive kind of trends, but I think also it needs to come top down. So I think both of these things are absolutely necessary. But it has to start somewhere, and the way it starts is probably much more from the bottoms up, and then eventually I think policy will follow and will start hopefully having bigger impacts.
Yeah, I've got two questions from the audience, and one is more practically concerning dance. How does dance solve the issue of storing the bikes? Are there also safe places where people can store them if they cannot put them into their small apartments, for example?
Well, I mean, so dance is we have a removable battery on the vehicle, so you can take the battery with you and charge the battery in your apartment. So it's actually designed to be stored on the street. We have a safe sort of lock solution. So we have a cable lock that goes into a frame lock on the first version of our vehicle, and we have obviously vetted all of these safety mechanisms to make sure that they work well, and we're iterating on it as well, right? So we're sort of like looking at what happens out there, and we are calculating with a certain loss rate, like like we will be losing a certain amount of bikes on the streets, right? Unfortunately, but the good thing is, like, we have a whole company full of smart engineers and people thinking about how can we prevent theft, right? So the idea is you can actually have the dance bike outside your home if you don't have the space in your backyard or in your apartment.
Okay, well, thank you, Sören, for the question. And I have another one left, which I think is a good question for the end of the session to wrap it up and as a conclusion. Mike is asking, you are all experts in raising money from investors, or you're investors yourselves. What are the 3 key advices for impact startups for fundraising? Maybe we start with Eric. You want to go ahead, and then Anne, and then maybe Fridtjof?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I'm trying to get very short answer to that question is, you have to think big, right? Like if you're looking at the venture world, you have to come with a big story, something that can ultimately have big and meaningful impact. So think big, and then try to really work on your pitch, work on telling that story in a compelling way. Don't add too much complexity. Try and think of one thing that you're solving, doing better than everyone else, and do that. And then, yeah, be on top of your game, everything, you know, the business, the numbers, the, you know, whatever it is that matters for your business. Those are maybe the three things to think about.
Yeah.
So Anne, what would you add to that?
I would say to show that you make a real impact. First of all, you need to show that you have a specific impact on, for example, climate or resource consumption, so whatever. And then the second thing is to show that you can scale that. This is a high scalable innovation, so that the impact in the absolute impact is measurable and not only a small, tiny impact in a small niche.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Fridtjof, you're the expert on investing. What is your perspective on that?
I mean, I think that was brilliant pieces of advice. So definitely +1 for that. So the third one is maybe on a higher level, put in your idea on the mega trends as well. Like, I don't know, for example, with Anne, show that the plastic problem is there, ways to address it, future bans, and kind of point to some countries where are bans already and changes in regulation. So you might be able to have some proof points that support your vision and support that also from the government side and changing regulation if that's possible.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, is it a problem that when startups approach you or founders approach you, when they already bring other investors with them, and or does it make things easier maybe?
No, not at all. So we highly welcome that. And I think part of what we can do is then also talk to other investors and to bring in that science perspective. So, I mean, with Dance, there are lots of famous investors in that. And we see our position really as someone who's kind of brings back the attention to, hey, that's the impact perspective on this. And some other founders pick us to have us as a partner for the impact when it comes to speaking with the other investors. And also the other way around, other investors welcome us at the board, because if we bring in the evidence for the impact of a startup, that's also good for them. So either way, it's fine. We're happy to partner up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Fridtjof. Thanks a lot, Anne. Thanks a lot, Eric. I'm very much looking forward to using the Traceless materials, and I'm also looking forward to using Dance here in Hamburg. I said I already got an e-bike, but I have to admit that most of the time it's standing at home, not being used by anyone. So I think there's a better opportunity for that. Thanks a lot for being with us this morning, this noon. The next panel will be Social Impact Banking. Wie können die SDGs die Finanzwelt transformieren? It will be in German again, and it starts here. Es fängt 1 Uhr an, so please be back in a couple of minutes. Seid bald wieder zurück. Danke euch. Thank you very much. Bye bye.